The dinner plate shattered against the wall, missing my head by inches. 8-year-old Isabella screamed from the hallway, her small hands pressed against her ears. My father's face twisted with rage while my mother stood behind him, arms crossed, nodding her approval. "You ungrateful brat," my father shouted, his hand striking my cheek with a sharp crack. "After everything we've done for you." The sting burned, but Isabella's terrified sobs hurt more. She had never seen violence in our peaceful home. Now her grandparents, people she trusted, had shattered that safety. My mother stepped forward, her voice cold as winter. "Maybe this will teach you some respect, Eliana. You're nothing without us." Another slap landed, harder this time. Isabella's cries echoed through the house, a sound that would haunt my dreams. As I touched my swelling face, something inside me crystallized. This wasn't just about me anymore. They had traumatized my daughter. I helped Isabella to her room, whispering gentle words while my mind raced. My parents thought they could break me like they had when I was a child. They were wrong. This time, I wouldn't be their victim. This time, I would be their downfall. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. Isabella's bedroom felt like a sanctuary after the chaos downstairs. Her small body trembled as I held her close, feeling each sob shake through her tiny frame. Her tear-stained face looked up at me with confusion and fear. "Mommy, why did Grandpa hit you?" she whispered, her voice breaking my heart. "Why was Grandma so mean?" I smoothed her dark hair, choosing my words carefully. "How do you explain family betrayal to a child who believes in bedtime stories and happy endings? How do you tell her that sometimes the people who should protect us become the ones who hurt us most?" "Sometimes adults make very bad choices, sweetheart," I said softly. "But it's never, ever okay for anyone to hurt someone else." She pressed her face against my shoulder. "I was so scared, Mommy. I thought they might hurt you more." Her innocence was a mirror, reflecting the gravity of what had happened. My parents hadn't just assaulted me, they had traumatized their granddaughter. They had shown her that love could turn violent, that trust could shatter in an instant. As Isabella finally drifted to sleep, I made a silent promise. I would make sure she never felt that fear again. And I would make my parents pay for stealing her sense of security. The next morning brought an eerie silence. Isabella ate her cereal quietly, shooting nervous glances toward the living room where my parents sat watching television as if nothing had happened. The bruises on my face told a different story. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, examining the purple marks that decorated my cheek and jaw. These weren't just bruises, they were evidence. Evidence of the people who gave me life deciding to try and take my dignity. Family photographs lined the hallway, showing happier times. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, graduation celebrations. All lies, I realized now. The smiles were masks hiding years of manipulation and control. The love, they claimed, was really possession. My parents had always been demanding, but distance had made their behavior seem normal. Coming to stay with us for the holidays had pulled away the curtain, revealing their true nature. They saw me as property, not a person. They viewed Isabella as another tool for control. The blood that connected us had become poison in my veins. Some bonds are meant to be broken, I thought, touching my tender jaw. Some family ties are really chains. Today, I began planning their removal from our lives. And my revenge for what they'd stolen from Isabella's childhood. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. My parents emerged from their bedroom that morning like actors taking the stage. My mother hummed while preparing coffee, my father read his newspaper with casual indifference. Neither acknowledged the previous night's violence or my swollen face. "Good morning, dear," my mother said cheerfully, as if she hadn't watched her husband assault me 12 hours earlier. "I hope you slept well." Isabella stared at them with wide, uncertain eyes. She looked between their calm faces and my bruised cheek, trying to make sense of adults who could switch from monsters to grandparents so easily. My father glanced up from his paper. "Isabella, come give Grandpa a hug." "No," Isabella said firmly, surprising everyone. "You hurt my mommy." He laughed, actually laughed, as if her accusation was amusing. "Don't be silly, sweetheart. Grown-ups sometimes have disagreements. It's nothing to worry about." My mother nodded supportively. "Your mommy was being difficult. Sometimes difficult people need to learn lessons." The casual way they dismissed their violence, the complete absence of remorse, showed me exactly who I was dealing with. These weren't people who made mistakes, they were people who believed violence was acceptable when they didn't get their way. No apology would come because they felt no guilt. That realization freed me from hoping they might change. 3 days passed in tense silence. My parents acted like gracious houseguests while I documented every bruise with photographs, every threatening comment in a notebook. Isabella stayed close to me, her trust in her grandparents completely shattered. Then came the surprise that changed everything. "Eliana," my father said over dinner, "we need to discuss our living situation." I looked up from my plate, expecting them to announce their departure. Instead, my mother leaned forward with false sweetness. "We've decided we'd like to stay here permanently," she announced. "Our lease is ending, and honestly, we can't afford another place." The audacity took my breath away. They wanted to move in with the daughter they'd assaulted, expecting me to house and feed them after traumatizing my child. My father cleared his throat. "We're family, after all. And Isabella needs her grandparents nearby." Isabella dropped her fork with a clatter, looking horrified at the prospect. "We can help with expenses," my mother added, though I knew their help would come with strings attached. "It makes financial sense for everyone." They sat there expectantly, as if their request was reasonable. As if violence could be overlooked for convenience. As if I would welcome my abusers into my home permanently. I smiled sweetly. "Let me think about it." The word left my lips before I fully understood my own strategy. "Yes. You can stay." Isabella's face went white with shock. My parents beamed with satisfaction, probably thinking their intimidation tactics had worked perfectly. They had no idea they'd just walked into a trap of their own making. "Wonderful," my mother clapped her hands together. "We'll make this work beautifully, you'll see." My father nodded approvingly. "Family should stick together. You're making the right choice, Eliana." That night, after Isabella had gone to bed, still confused by my decision, I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, planning. Letting them stay wasn't forgiveness or weakness. It was strategic warfare. If they lived under my roof, I could document everything. Every cruel comment, every attempt to manipulate Isabella, every moment their masks slipped. I could gather evidence of their patterns, their behavior, their true nature. Most importantly, I could control the battlefield. In their own apartment, they'd be harder to monitor. Here, every move they made would be under my watchful eye. They thought they'd won by pressuring me into housing them. They had no idea I'd just gained the perfect vantage point to orchestrate their complete destruction. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning, and I'd chosen the perfect ground to fight it on. Isabella's question came during breakfast, her voice small but determined. "Mom, why are they still here?" My parents looked up from their toast, pretending not to hear the underlying fear in her words. My mother smiled that fake smile she wore like armor. "Because we're family, sweet pea," she said in that sickeningly sweet tone. "Don't you want us here?" Isabella's honest 8-year-old eyes met mine across the table. "No. I don't." The directness of childhood cut through adult pretense like a knife. My father's jaw tightened, but he maintained his grandfather facade. "Isabella," I said gently, sometimes we have to make difficult choices for complicated reasons. She nodded solemnly, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. Children are naturally observant, and Isabella had always been particularly intuitive. She was watching everything, their false kindness, my careful responses, the tension that hummed beneath our forced family dinners. Later that evening, she whispered to me while I tucked her in, "Are you planning something, Mommy?" I kissed her forehead, marveling at her perceptiveness. "I'm planning to keep you safe, sweetheart. Always." Her small hand squeezed mine. "Good. I don't trust them anymore." Neither did I. But trust worked both ways, and my parents had no idea their granddaughter had become my most valuable ally. The whispered conversation drifted from their bedroom at 2 in the morning. I crept closer to their door, pressing my ear against the wood, my heart pounding at what I might discover. "She's weaker than I expected," my mother's voice carried through the thin wall. "The old Eliana would have fought back more." My father chuckled darkly. "Motherhood has made her soft. Perfect for our needs. Once we're established here, we can start working on Isabella," my mother continued. "Turn her against Eliana gradually. Children are so easily influenced." My blood went cold. They weren't just planning to freeload, they intended to systematically poison my daughter against me. "The house is worth quite a bit," my father said. "If we play this right, we could end up owning it eventually." "Eliana won't know what hit her until it's too late," my mother agreed. "She always was the stupid one in the family." I backed away from the door, my hands shaking with rage and revelation. Their cruelty ran deeper than I'd imagined. They weren't just abusive, they were calculating predators planning to steal my life piece by piece. But they'd made one critical error. They assumed I was still the scared, powerless child they once controlled. They had no idea that child had grown into a woman who would fight for her daughter with everything she had. During the day, my parents performed their roles perfectly. They helped with dishes, played board games with Isabella, and spoke politely about household matters. But masks require constant energy to maintain, and theirs began slipping when they thought I wasn't looking. I caught my mother pinching Isabella's arm when she thought I was in the bathroom, hissing, "Don't be such a baby about your food." My father deliberately knocked over Isabella's art project, then blamed her for leaving it in the way. When Isabella started crying, he told her she was too sensitive, just like her mother. The psychological warfare was subtle but constant. They undermined Isabella's confidence with backhanded comments disguised as guidance. They criticized my parenting in front of her, planting seeds of doubt about my competence. "Your mother doesn't discipline you enough," my father would say. "That's why you're so difficult. Maybe if your mother was stricter, you'd be better behaved," my mother would add during Isabella's moments of normal 8-year-old behavior. Each incident was small enough to dismiss individually, but together they formed a pattern of deliberate emotional abuse. They were trying to break down both Isabella and me, making us doubt ourselves and each other. But I was documenting everything, building a case that would eventually bury them completely. The poison they tried to feed Isabella was delivered in carefully measured doses. I discovered this during an innocent bedtime conversation when Isabella asked, "Mommy, why don't you have a better job?" The question surprised me. Isabella had never shown interest in my career before. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Grandma says you could make more money if you tried harder. She says that's why Daddy left, because you don't work hard enough." My ex-husband had left for completely different reasons, none of which involved my career. But my mother was rewriting history, using Isabella's innocence as a weapon against me. "What else has Grandma been telling you?" I asked gently. Isabella's list was devastating. According to my parents, I was lazy, irresponsible, and the reason for every bad thing in our lives. They told her I was lucky they were there to fix our family. "But I don't want them to fix us," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "I liked our family the way it was." I held her close, fury burning in my chest. They were trying to steal my daughter's love and trust, convincing her I was inadequate while positioning themselves as saviors. It was psychological abuse disguised as concern, manipulation wrapped in false wisdom. And I was going to make them pay for every poisonous word. While cleaning their room, I discovered a shoebox hidden behind their dresser. Inside lay letters, documents, and photographs that revealed the true scope of their manipulation. My hands trembled as I read through decades of lies. Letters to my siblings painted me as the family failure, the one who couldn't be trusted with important decisions. They'd been systematically isolating me from extended family for years, controlling the narrative about my life. Financial documents showed they'd been claiming me as a dependent on their taxes despite not supporting me. Bank statements revealed they'd taken out credit cards in my name during my teenage years, destroying my credit before I even knew what credit was. Most devastating were the letters they'd written but never sent, letters that revealed their true feelings about Isabella and me. We were burdens, mistakes, and disappointments they felt forced to tolerate. One letter, addressed to my deceased grandmother, explained how they planned to get what we deserve from my inheritance, money that was legally mine but which they felt entitled to claim. The box was a treasure trove of evidence proving decades of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and calculated cruelty. They'd kept these documents like trophies, never imagining their victim would one day find them. I photographed every single page before carefully returning the box to its hiding place. My best friend Hannah noticed the changes immediately when she visited for coffee. The way I tensed when my parents entered the room, how Isabella clung to me, the forced politeness that replaced our usual relaxed atmosphere. "Can we talk privately?" Hannah asked, her concerned eyes taking in the bruises I'd tried to cover with makeup. In the privacy of my backyard, the whole story poured out. Hannah listened without judgment, her anger growing with each detail I revealed. "You need to get them out of here," she said firmly. "This is insane, Eliana. They're abusing you and Isabella." "I know," I whispered. "But I have a plan." Hannah's expression shifted from concern to curiosity as I explained my strategy. Her background in law enforcement made her the perfect ally. She understood evidence collection and legal procedures. "I can help," she offered immediately. "I know people who specialize in elder abuse cases, from both sides. And I can help you document everything properly." Having Hannah's support transformed my secret mission into a real operation. She provided equipment for recording conversations, advice on legal documentation, and most importantly, validation that I wasn't crazy or overreacting. "They picked the wrong woman to mess with," Hannah said grimly. "Let's destroy them legally and completely." Finally, I wasn't fighting alone. With Hannah's help, our house became a carefully orchestrated evidence collection facility. Hidden cameras captured their behavior when they thought I wasn't watching. Audio recorders preserved their cruel comments and manipulative conversations. Every incident was cataloged with dates, times, and detailed descriptions. Hannah taught me how to photograph bruises properly, how to document emotional abuse, and how to preserve evidence that would hold up in court. My parents, comfortable in their perceived victory, grew bolder. They stopped hiding their contempt, believing I was too weak to challenge them. This confidence made them careless, and careless people make mistakes. I created situations that revealed their true nature. When Isabella spilled juice on the carpet, I deliberately left the room to see how they'd react without me there. The hidden camera captured my father grabbing Isabella's wrist hard enough to leave marks while berating her for being clumsy like her useless mother. When neighbors visited, I recorded my parents' performance of being loving grandparents, then captured their immediate return to cruelty once we were alone. The contrast was damning. Each day brought new evidence of their systematic abuse. They thought they were winning, manipulating me into housing and feeding them while they destroyed my relationship with Isabella. Instead, they were building the case for their own destruction, one documented cruelty at a time. My parents' greed expanded with their comfort. What began as a request to stay temporarily evolved into demands for permanent ownership. They criticized my housekeeping, my parenting, and my financial decisions while making themselves at home in my space. "This place could be so much better with proper management," my father declared, eyeing my furniture with calculating interest. My mother nodded agreement. "Isabella needs more structure. We should be making the important decisions around here." They spoke about my home and my daughter as if they were theirs to control. The entitlement was breathtaking. They genuinely believed their violence had earned them authority over our lives. Isabella watched these conversations with growing alarm. She understood, even at 8, that her grandparents were trying to take over. The stress was affecting her sleep, her appetite, and her usually sunny disposition. "When are they leaving?" she asked me nightly, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "Soon," I promised, and I meant it. The evidence file grew thicker each day. Hannah helped me organize everything chronologically, creating a timeline that showed escalating abuse and manipulation. We had photographs, recordings, documents, and witness statements. My parents thought they were claiming territory, establishing dominance. In reality, they were walking deeper into quicksand with every cruel word and manipulative action. The storm was gathering, and they had no idea they were standing directly in its path. The theft happened on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. I returned home to find my jewelry box empty and my grandmother's antique ring, my most precious inheritance, missing from its hiding place. Isabella met me at the door, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, they took your special box." When I asked where it went, Grandpa said you'd given it to them. My hands shook as I see. Items worth thousands of dollars in sentimental and actual value. But everything was gone: my mother's wedding ring from her first marriage, the pearl necklace from my graduation, the diamond earrings from my grandmother. Confronting them revealed their complete lack of remorse. "Family shares," my mother said dismissively. "Besides, you never wore that old junk anyway." "We're selling some pieces to help with household expenses," my father added. "You should be grateful we're contributing." They had stolen my inheritance and intended to sell it for spending money, acting as if theft was their right as elders. The brazenness was stunning. They genuinely believed my property belonged to them. That night, I filed a police report for theft. Hannah helped me document the missing items with photographs and appraisals I'd kept for insurance purposes. The final betrayal had been committed. Now it was time for the reckoning. Attorney Morgan Fletcher reviewed my evidence file with the methodical precision of a surgeon examining X-rays. Her smile grew wider with each document, each photograph, each recorded conversation. "This is extraordinary documentation," she said, her voice filled with professional admiration. "Most abuse victims don't have nearly this level of proof." Hannah had recommended Morgan specifically for her expertise in elder abuse, cases where elderly people were the perpetrators, not the victims. She understood the unique dynamics of adult children being abused by aging parents. "What are your goals?" Morgan asked, her pen poised over a legal pad. "I want them out of my house immediately. I want restraining orders. I want them prosecuted for theft and assault. And I want to make sure they can never hurt Isabella again." Morgan nodded approvingly. "All achievable. The theft alone is a felony given the value of the stolen jewelry. The assault charges will stick with your photographic evidence. The harassment and emotional abuse of Isabella makes them legally unsuitable to have unsupervised access." She outlined a strategy that would systematically destroy their lives: criminal charges, civil lawsuits, restraining orders, and public exposure of their financial fraud. Everything legal, everything justified, everything permanent. "When do we start?" I asked. Morgan's smile was predatory. "We started the moment you walked in here. The papers are already being prepared." Justice was finally within reach. Isabella found me crying in the kitchen after my meeting with Morgan. The weight of everything, the abuse, the planning, the impending legal battle, had finally overwhelmed me. "Mommy, what's wrong?" she asked, climbing into my lap despite being almost too big for it. Through my tears, I tried to explain that things were going to get difficult soon, that her grandparents would be leaving and might not be happy about it. Isabella listened with the solemnity of someone far older than her 8 years. When I finished, she took my face in her small hands and looked directly into my eyes. "Mom, don't let them win," she whispered fiercely. "They hurt you. They hurt me. They stole your special things. Don't let them win." Her courage stunned me. This little girl who had been terrorized and manipulated was standing up for both of us, showing strength I sometimes struggled to find in myself. They made me scared in my own house, she continued. But you're my mommy, and mommies protect their babies. Right? Right, I whispered, finding my resolve again in her unwavering faith. Then fight them, Isabella said simply. Fight them and win. My daughter's strength became my strength. Her belief in me became my weapon. Her innocence, which they had tried to poison, became the very thing that would destroy them. While my parents enjoyed what they believed was their permanent victory, I moved through the house like a ghost, preparing for war. They had no idea that every casual cruelty was being recorded, every theft documented, every manipulation catalogued. Hannah helped coordinate with law enforcement, ensuring that when the hammer fell, it would fall completely. We scheduled everything from maximum impact, criminal charges, civil suits, and eviction notices all delivered simultaneously. The hidden cameras captured increasingly disturbing behavior as my parents grew comfortable with their perceived dominance. They discussed selling more of my possessions, planning to claim Isabella if anything happened to me, and strategies for gaining legal control over my finances. Isabella, understanding the gravity of our situation, became my secret partner. She would tell me immediately when her grandparents said or did something cruel, providing timestamps that correlated with our recordings. Are we spies? She asked one evening, enjoying the cloak and dagger atmosphere despite the serious situation. We're soldiers, I corrected gently. And soldiers gather intelligence before they win wars. My parents saw a broken woman who had capitulated to their demands. In reality, they were living with someone who had become their judge, jury, and executioner, carefully building the case that would end them completely. The silence before the storm was almost over. The family gathering Morgan arranged seemed innocent enough, a simple dinner to discuss family matters. I invited my siblings, a few cousins, and close family friends. My parents preened, believing this was their opportunity to solidify their position as head of our household. They had no idea they were attending their own execution. After dinner, I stood up with a folder in my hands. I have some things to share about what's been happening in our home. What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence that left the room in stunned silence. I showed photographs of my bruises, played recordings of their cruel comments to Isabella, and displayed documents proving their decades of financial manipulation. The theft of my jewelry was particularly damning. Several family members recognized pieces they remembered from my grandmother's collection. My parents sat frozen as their carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. The loving grandparents, the concerned elders, the family leaders, all revealed as manipulative abusers who had assaulted their daughter and terrorized their granddaughter. You're lying, my mother finally whispered, but the evidence was overwhelming. My sister gasped when she heard recordings of our parents discussing how to turn Isabella against me. My brother's face went white with rage as he listened to their plans for stealing my house. By the evening's end, my parents faced a room full of family members who now understood their true nature. The public humiliation was complete. The aftermath of the family revelation was swift and brutal. Within hours, my parents' phones began ringing with angry calls from relatives who had believed their lies for years. Social media posts exposing their behavior spread through our extended family network like wildfire. My cousin shared the recordings with her church community, where my parents had been presenting themselves as devoted grandparents caring for an ungrateful daughter. The congregation was horrified to learn the truth about the people they'd been admiring. Neighbors who had witnessed their public displays of affection for Isabella were disgusted to hear how they spoke to her in private. The contrast between their public personas and private cruelty was stark and damning. My parents tried damage control, claiming I was lying or had taken things out of context. But the evidence was too comprehensive, too well documented to dismiss. Hannah had helped me create an unbreakable case. Their reputation, built over decades of careful manipulation, collapsed in a single evening. People who had respected them now saw them as predators. Friends turned away. Community groups expelled them. Their social standing evaporated completely. Watching their world crumble felt like watching justice finally assert itself. They had spent years destroying my reputation with lies, now the truth was destroying theirs. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. They aged years and days, their confidence shattered by social exile. The police arrived at 7 in the morning, armed with warrants and handcuffs. Isabella watched from my bedroom window as her grandparents were led away in police cars, their faces twisted with shock and humiliation. The theft charges came first, felony larceny for stealing jewelry worth over $5,000. The assault charges followed, supported by photographs of my injuries and Isabella's testimony about witnessing the violence. Morgan had structured the legal assault like a chess match, with each move calculated for maximum impact. Criminal charges would result in fines and possible jail time. Civil suits would strip them of any remaining assets. Restraining orders would prevent them from contacting Isabella or me ever again. The financial investigation revealed decades of fraud, credit cards opened in my name, tax claims listing me as a dependent, forged signatures on various documents. Each discovery added new charges to their growing legal troubles. Their lawyer, appointed by the state since they couldn't afford private counsel, advised immediate guilty pleas to minimize jail time. But the damage to their finances was irreversible. Legal fees, restitution, and civil judgments would consume whatever resources they had left. Isabella pressed her face against the window as the police cars drove away. "Are they gone forever, Mommy?" "Forever," I promised, and the relief in her voice was worth every moment of planning and pain. 6 months later, I saw them outside the grocery store. My father held a cardboard sign asking for help, while my mother sat on the curb beside him, both looking decades older than when they'd lived in my house. Their apartment had been foreclosed after they couldn't pay rent without stealing from me. Their car had been repossessed. Their Social Security barely covered basic necessities, and their legal troubles had consumed their small savings. They spotted me leaving the store with Isabella and approached desperately. "Eliana, please," my mother begged. "We're family. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents." My father nodded eagerly. "We've learned our lesson. Can't we work something out?" Isabella moved closer to me, remembering their cruelty. The fear in her eyes reminded me why I'd fought so hard to destroy them. "You chose violence over love," I said calmly. "You chose greed over family. These are the consequences of your choices." They pleaded, promised to change, claimed they'd been misunderstood. But their desperation only proved the success of my strategy. They were exactly where their behavior had earned them, powerless, homeless, and alone. I walked past them without another word, Isabella's small hand secure in mine. Behind us, I heard my mother crying and my father cursing, but their pain no longer moved me. Justice sometimes looks like broken people holding cardboard signs. Isabella's nightmares stopped 3 weeks after my parents' arrest. Her appetite returned, her grades improved, and most importantly, her laugh came back, that pure, joyful sound that had been missing from our house for months. "I'm proud of you, Mommy," she said one evening as we cooked dinner together in our peaceful kitchen. "You protected us." The house felt different without their toxic presence. Lighter, somehow. The air itself seemed cleaner without their whispered manipulations and casual cruelties poisoning our space. Isabella's art projects reappeared around the house, colorful drawings and craft projects she'd been too anxious to create while living under their psychological terrorism. Her confidence bloomed as she realized she was safe to be a child again. "Can we have Hannah over for dinner?" Isabella asked, stirring pasta sauce with concentrated seriousness. Of course, I smiled, remembering how Hannah had helped save both our lives by supporting my fight for justice. That evening, watching Isabella laugh at Hannah's terrible jokes, I realized I had accomplished something more important than revenge. I had reclaimed our peace, our safety, and our right to live without fear. My daughter's smile was proof that sometimes destroying bad people is the kindest thing you can do for good people. The war was over, and we had won more than just victory, we had won back our lives. The final court date arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. My parents, wearing ill-fitting donated clothes, sat across the courtroom looking like the broken people they had become. The theft conviction was formal, they'd already admitted guilt to avoid harsher sentences. Judge Harrison read their sentences with the gravity appropriate to their crimes. 12 months probation, community service, full restitution for stolen property, and permanent restraining orders preventing contact with Isabella or me. Your behavior toward your daughter and granddaughter represents a profound failure of family trust, she said sternly. The court finds your actions particularly disturbing given your positions as elders who should have protected, not harmed, younger family members. My parents aged visibly as she spoke, understanding that their reputations would never recover from the public record of their crimes. As we left the courthouse, they made one final attempt to approach me. "This is your last chance to forgive us," my father said desperately. "No," I replied firmly. "This is your last chance to accept responsibility for your choices." I walked away with Isabella beside me, leaving them standing in the courthouse plaza with their court-appointed lawyer. The legal system had rendered its judgment. Society had expelled them. Their family had rejected them. There were no second chances for people who assault children's mothers and terrorize 8-year-old girls. The courthouse doors closed behind us like the final page of a book. 1 year later, our lives had transformed completely. Isabella thrived in school, made new friends, and rediscovered her natural happiness. Our house became a home again, filled with laughter instead of tension, love instead of fear. Hannah remained our closest ally, someone who understood the depth of what we'd survived and celebrated our victory with genuine joy. Isabella called her Aunt Hannah, and considered her part of our chosen family. The jewelry was never recovered. My parents had sold it quickly for cash, but Morgan's civil suit ensured they paid every penny of its appraised value plus damages. The money went into Isabella's college fund, transforming their theft into her future. Sometimes Isabella asked about her grandparents, usually around holidays when other children talked about extended family. I answered honestly but simply, they made choices that hurt us, and now they lived with the consequences of those choices. "Do you think they learned?" she asked one Christmas morning, surrounded by presents from people who truly loved her. "I think they learned that actions have consequences," I replied. Whether they learned to be better people, I don't know. But it doesn't matter anymore, they can't hurt us. Looking back, I realized I hadn't just destroyed their lives, I had reclaimed mine. I had taught my daughter that love means protection, that family doesn't excuse abuse, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable cruel people. Peace, it turned out, wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the presence of safety, love, and justice finally served. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.